It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, January 20th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is honestly surprised Tsyplakov got a suspension.
I'm not.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit fanduel.com to get started. To keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials and, of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are going to get to Flyers versus Devils. That was a pretty grind out game. We'll get into the details of that. Plus, it's Monday. We'll have our Nemesis of the week. But we thought we'd start with the Tsyplakov suspension just because, first off, I find it fascinating. And I said at the intro, I was surprised. I think once I dug into it and once I read the explanation, sure, I understood it. But to have a penalty reviewed in game, canceled, and then later gotten supplemental discipline is a pretty rare occurrence.
Well, I mean, again, he should have gotten a penalty in game.
Oh, sure.
Like the fact that they did review it, I wasn't sure. So I went on another show and said they should review all these penalties because when you see a guy laying there, Toronto has the ability to correct that. And they didn't even correct it. I don't care about priors anymore. I don't care if somebody has a previous history or not. If it's a headshot, it's a headshot. If you're trying to take it out of the game, you're trying to take it out of the game. And I think he should have gotten 5 games. Like that was a predatory headshot. And I think there were enough angles that they could see that would warrant that. They gave him 3 because of their whole priors thing, but that's baloney.
Well, interestingly enough, I had a whole discussion about the hit and what should happen on the Friday show of Locked On NHL, which I co-host with Gil Martin, who's the host of Locked On Islanders. It was very fortuitous timing that the two of us got to talk about that. And he put together just a little clip of the Islanders' perspective on that. So we're going to play that for you right now.
Gil Martin from Locked On Islanders here to talk a little bit about the Max Tsyplakov hit from the game on Thursday night. And, I have very mixed feelings about it. I will start by saying this. Maxim Tsyplakov is not a dirty player. He is not the kind of guy who would intentionally try to injure an opponent. And I don't think he was headhunting on that play. My initial reaction when I first saw the hit in real time was that it was a 5-minute major misconduct and a likely suspension. Then I saw the replays, and the replays were very ambiguous. Some angles, it looked like there was very little contact to the head. Most of it was to the shoulder. Other videos did not look that good. I think based on my initial view of this situation, I think that the suspension was warranted. The only thing that baffles me is that you had the penalty, the 5-minute major, overturned by the officials at the game, and then the league steps in and suspends the guy. So I just want the league to be a little bit more consistent. Again, I don't think there was intention. I hope that, there's no long-term injury here, but I do think that there was contact to the head and that the decision by the league was justified, even if I'm not happy with the inconsistency that the league showed.
All right. So I think he disagreed with you a little bit there.
Yeah,
Russ,
I'm going to disagree with him more.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
here's the reasons. If I punch you in the face, right? Yeah, Russ isn't the guy that usually punches you in the face, but I still did it.
Yep.
I still did the action. And so it doesn't matter if I'm a person that has never done it before and may never do it again. You did it there. And I don't know if he was mad or if it just happened, but it happened. And you got to pay the price for it happening. That's my feeling about that. And my feeling is when a guy's there on the ice holding his head, uh, it's more than 3 games. I'm sorry. And he missed a game already. And who knows if he's going to miss another game or 2 or 3 if you want to start playing that game too. So, again, I don't see how there's another perspective to this. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, he was trying very hard to defend
No,
Tsyplakov
no, I
when
know.
we had
I
our
know.
longer conversation, and, like, I agree with you. It's like, it doesn't matter if that's not a thing that he typically does. It's like, that happens in, like, defense, like,
Right.
character witness statements all the time
Every
in
day.
court, right? So, like, take it easy on this person because they're normally a great
Right. He's a
person,
good guy otherwise. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there was absolutely stuff that could have been done to avoid the severity of the hit. And so kind of going into the Gil feeling like it's unfair that they overturned what was decided at the game. I read the article from Scouting the Refs, who are pretty good at
Mhm.
analyzing these calls, and so they pointed out 2 things: that penalty reviews are done by the on ice officials. The situation room does not weigh in
But
on
they
that.
should. But they
They
should.
should,
Because they're
right?
connected, and when they
Yeah.
see that something is either overturned or egregious or about to be wrong, all they have to do is say something in their ear. I was trying to point that out on Off the Post, which hasn't even aired yet, but that's my basic point on that.
Yeah. So, and player safety can make their decisions independent of everything that happens during a game.
Right.
And I think that that's just a point to show that it is okay how this was handled based on the current rules. You want to change those rules? That's a separate issue. But based on how they run things now, everything was handled like to the letter of the law.
Okay, that's fine. I want to change the rules. Because
Yeah, that's
again,
fine.
there's a couple of things here. Why even have we were talking about this at the game, an in-game hearing, in-person hearing anymore? It's
Yeah.
antiquated, it's stupid. You have Zoom. So what? Just because and we've all been conditioned. So now, if he gets called in for in-game, it's going to be more games than if he gets a phone call. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
like that.
Should not be like that at
None of
all.
that should be like that.
It should just be a hearing and
That's
then a
it.
determination is made.
Right.
There should not be this
There
dividing line.
shouldn't be these levels. What's with
Now,
these levels?
the only exception to that maybe is that if it's not a player safety thing, if it's like an off ice issue, maybe it's a different kind of
Okay, but this is
procedure for that.
all player
But
safety we're talking about.
yeah, yeah. So it's all player safety. Now, from the player safety explanation of the suspension, this is where they get to the no, there was an intention here to
Of
hit the head,
course.
right? Because, it was initially shoulder to shoulder contact. Like, the shoulder hit the head to some degree and hit his chin. You could see that. It was obvious in several of the angles, and Ryan Poehling's head was the thing that absorbed the impact. It doesn't
Right.
matter if he was aiming for the shoulder. The
Right.
head is what got the impact, and that's what hurt him. So
I
you
think
have to suspend it, right?
right. I think we have to get past this. It happens in football too. Even if I hit you here, if it goes and hits your chin or you go
Yeah,
up and the elbow hits the head, it's still a headshot
yeah,
because there is a way to hit a guy in the chest and never touch his head. You could do it. You could hit their side. There's a lot of different things you could do. But once the head gets hit, whether it's follow through or not, it's a headshot.
yep. And then the other thing that player safety pointed out is that Ryan Poehling was in the process of shooting the puck and does not change the position of his body to contribute to himself getting hurt. That all of the injury was caused by the actions of Tsyplakov. So
Right.
that's again why you have to suspend him.
Right. Right. And I mean, again, whether it's a momentary poor choice or whatever, it happened. The results happened, and I still think they went light on them. I'm sorry. But again, I understand they held up their rules the way they are.
Mhm.
The next CBA, I would like there to be a different situation, like we were just talking about, because I still don't think they have it right.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think they absolutely should reevaluate this process for every CBA that comes along. uh, for perpetuity. Tsyplakov won't be in the game this Friday due to the suspension, but there is a game the following week in Philadelphia that he will be eligible to play in. So that should be a doozy.
Oh yeah,
And,
everybody's going to load up in that game.
yep. So, of course, we will talk about that when the time comes. But also, we had a game against the New Jersey Devils, and the Flyers ground that one out and wound up winning 3-1. We are going to talk about that coming up next.
From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keep every game exciting. You know what? Right now, I got to go with the Chiefs. I just keep taking the Chiefs. It doesn't matter. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, on tomorrow's show, we are going to talk Flyers versus Red Wings. Very important game in this playoff race. Everything is important, but we'll talk about the Red Wings' current trajectory, as well as check in with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, who had a similar week to the previous week, with it starting off real strong and then disappointment at the end. But
Yep.
I think there's some good reason for that. So we'll dig into that. Plus, we're going to answer your mailbag questions on the Wednesday show. So get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on any of our socials, or comment on our YouTube channel. So for Flyers versus Devils, I think obviously the physicality of this game was a huge factor, including, I think, block shots as a huge
They ate a
element
lot of
here,
pucks.
right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, the first thing is that first period was as boring as any period I've
Oh my
watched the
God.
entire year. It was brutal. It was just low event hockey.
I
The
know. I'm like, this
Saturday
is classic
afternoon,
Devils hockey, right?
yeah, especially on a Saturday afternoon. Uh, I can tell you that some of the, Devils writers, especially when I went downstairs, were, impressed with the Flyers, blocking of shots, shot suppression. This is the fewest shots I think that anybody has allowed against the Devils this year, or at least at
Yeah.
home. It was something like that. So I'll give the Flyers credit for that. But the game did come down to just that one play. So it's like that game was up for grabs. Like I even said it's going to be a ugly bounce or one little thing, and this
Yeah.
game will just be over. And it was. So it came out on the Flyers end of it, and that's fine. I think
Right.
Sam
But
Ersson had one of his better games because that first goal, 2 Flyers screened him. So those
right.
things were positives for sure.
Yeah, I will say, to your point about it, it just came down to that one play. One of the things that John Tortorella said post game basically echoes that, where he said the Flyers were patient and didn't make that big mistake
That's true.
that could cost them the game. And he was very happy that they did that. He mentioned Travis Konechny specifically, that he didn't go do something stupid,
Right.
which I thought was funny, but
That
also
is.
kind of true at the
Now
same
we have to
time.
be fair. Would it
Yeah,
have been a different game if it wasn't the offsides and the goal didn't come off the board for the Devils? It could have been, but it
maybe,
wasn't. So, but we
maybe.
don't know. So
It was offside. It was
that's it.
definitely offside.
Oh
It
no,
wasn't
it's
even
definitely
like,
offsides.
yeah, Flyers are
They're
locked down
undefeated
with,
this year with that, as far
yeah,
as I know.
yeah. Well, they're not going to challenge unless they think they're going to win.
Right.
So, or they know they're going to win.
Right.
So there's that. But yeah, the 33 block shots by the Flyers, 25 by the Devils. I can't imagine the number of bruises that
Ugh,
exist after that game.
brutal.
Um, but the shot attempts were wild too, and that's what led to all those block shots, right? So shot attempts were 64 to 59 Devils in this game. But I would say, like, some of this data is a little skewed by the flurry of activity at the very
Yes.
end of the game. So
Because
if
if
you
you
look at,
remember, even after the first period, they changed the shot totals. At the
yep,
end of the
they
game,
did.
they gave Cates an assist that he didn't have in the game. They changed a lot of
I
statistics in
know
this game.
they did. They did, because I was looking at stuff. right after the game was over, and I posted about it. And then right before recording, I was looking at the stats again. I was like, wait a minute, things are
Things
different here.
changed. Yeah.
They did. And, it's really evident about that flurry at the end of the game when you look at the 5-on-5 stats, because that was obviously a 6-on-5 for the Devils at the end. They had 6-on-4 for a brief spell of it too, I believe. But the high danger chances for at 5-on-5 was 12-1 Flyers.
Whew.
But in that like flurry and in the 6-on-5, they got 7 more high danger chances for
Right.
between their power plays and that 6-on-5 at the end. So I thought like that was really interesting that even though the Devils got like 64 shot attempts, Flyers blocked 33 of them, and only one of those shots was high danger at 5-on-5. Like that's pretty good
No, that is.
defense.
That is. No, the defense has really shored things up. But we could do shows on how this much attention to defense is sapping their offense.
In some ways.
Cam York is just offensively cratered. I mean, what does he have, 11 points or something? Drysdale, whether he had that uptick or not, his offense isn't there. He's playing a little better defensively. Okay. So all this stuff is okay, but it's not letting their natural game come through. And my whole thing is from a development standpoint that yes, it's nice to win. And yes, it's good to learn how to play defense first. But there's a point where you're playing too much defense and you're not letting the players be creative enough offensively because you're kind of putting restrictions on them. That's what I worry about for later in this season, especially if they're going to be in a playoff race. And I'll use air quotes for that because with the games in hand and the way other teams are playing, I'm not sure how realistic it is, but they are. Right now, the fact is mathematically they are. So this all affects how you run things.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I agree with you to a certain extent. I think they do need to be more offensive minded and creative in some instances. I don't think this game against the Devils is that game just because of the
No.
of
This
play.
was its own entity, but I think in general it's still
But you look at the
true.
Ducks game and it was wide open, right? Because they had the opportunity to play that way against a team like the Ducks. And so I think that in the right circumstances, I think it'll be interesting to see how they play against the Red Wings, because I think that'll be a bigger opportunity for them to open up their game offensively than they had against the Devils. Speaking of which, Matvei Michkov, I think he had a much better game against the Devils than he did against the Islanders.
No question, there was an improvement there. I really, the decisiveness on the shot for the goal was great. Play with Couturier is really good. The thing about it is it's better to have Couturier with them because their speeds sort of match because, Michkov's not a fast player, neither is Couturier. No, it's not to say the line.
But Couturier knew better enough that he's like, I can't skate like that. Dish the puck
and
off,
just
right?
dish it. And he's good at that. And he wins faceoffs, which again gives, Michkov more chances. So I think the pairing's good because of that. Is it sustainable? I don't know. And that's the other problem with Michkov is he's been going through different players all year. So that's the only other thing. But it was a great play.
Yeah. And, I think Rasmus Ristolainen had a tremendous game. I thought that, they gave him the belt after the game. And I thought that was deserved because he was doing all sorts of things. He was blocking shots like everybody else, but also he had some really good play along the boards. He had some very key clears. And I thought he stepped up offensively in the zone, a few times in a really effective way that didn't hamper his ability to play defense. And I'm just appreciating him a lot this season.
Yeah, I agree with that.
One little interesting element about this game, obviously, the Cates line is their best line right now. And
it's by far for the last 3 weeks.
Right. And one of the things that Tortorella said post game about, the power play goal where Brink scored was that most of the time he's going to put the first unit out there first on a power play. But because that line is playing so well, every so often he's going to put that second unit out first. And he chose to do that in this circumstance, and they capitalized on it. And it worked. And that was really good. But it was really interesting to get the insight into Torts' thinking on when he uses each unit given the circumstances. And I
Well,
thought
I
that
mean,
was
again, this shouldn't be,
really good.
wow, Torts is really telling us something. This should be the norm. All coaches do this, but it's rare when John does it. That's the difference.
Well, and the fact that he talked about it
Well, that's what I
specifically.
mean. All coaches
Yeah.
will talk about it. He's the one that sometimes won't.
Yeah.
So I'm always happy if he does.
Yeah, and as a small side note, on the face-off stats, I thought it was absolutely incredible. Noah Cates at the dot absolutely smoked Jack Hughes, right?
Yeah.
7 for 11, but Nico Hischier, who's like one of the best in the game at it, like Noah Cates only won 1 of the 7
Yeah.
face-offs he faced
He's
against
just
Nico
a
Hischier. I
stud on
know.
that.
I
And
know.
those
I just think
offensive
it's
zone
funny.
faceoffs for the Flyers late in the game is still there, man. That's
Yeah,
that's
well, we're
still an
gonna
issue.
talk about face-offs later this week and situational decision making related to
Yeah.
that. It's a really interesting topic there. But yeah, I think you talked about Sam Ersson a little bit earlier, and they lowered the shot total to 13 after the game ended from
That didn't help.
14. I know. I know. It did not help his percentage.
Nope.
But at the same time, one of the things he talked about in the post game in the locker room was that, it doesn't really matter that he only faced 13 shots because there was so much activity and the shots were being blocked in front of them. You look at all those
Right.
shot
He
attempts.
still has to be
He's got
ready for them.
he has to be ready and
Yes.
mentally there. And that's the thing that he focused on in this game. And I thought it was really important. And I thought he did a really good job like positioning, even if the shots didn't come through,
Well,
he was
okay.
ready and in good position.
But he's not being completely honest because on that first goal, his guys killed him on that. And that's the problem with
But he
too
did his
much.
job.
I know.
That's what he's saying.
But he didn't even see the puck.
No,
And
that's true.
and
That's
he
true.
should have been able to see the puck on a shot that
Yep.
Hamilton took. And that's the problem with these guys worrying about it too much. And also the problem is when you have 3 different goalies, you are playing it differently, even though the guys won't cop to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that overall it was like an all's well that ends well. And what I
Yes.
learned is that the Devils are good enough. They're not necessarily great,
Right,
but
but
they
the
are
idea is
good
to
enough.
win, right? And they're
Yep.
in a situation where they've dipped a little lately, and so
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it worked out.
All right. It is Monday. So we will have our nemesis of the week coming up next. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. And the same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage up to $5 million, no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you'd think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go there today to get started. Selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. We mentioned the Red Wings as the next opponent. Later in the week, we have the back-to-back against the Rangers and Islanders. It is a tough, tough week for the
It'll be an
Flyers
interesting
this
week.
week.
It's because the Rangers aren't playing the way they normally play. The Islanders are not playing well, but these are
Mhm.
interdivisional matchups, so they're
Yep,
always hard.
it's always a thing. Always a thing. Just a quick bit of NHL news. The escrow was canceled by the NHL for the Players Association, and there's even a little bit of a rebate that's going to
Right. So let
come.
me
And
ask you this.
yeah,
To be fair, didn't you think escrow didn't exist this season anyhow? I was under the
yeah,
impression it did not
yeah.
it wasn't happening anymore. And when I heard that, I was like, really? Escrow was still in play? I had no
Yep.
idea.
Yep. Now, I think that, they're expecting the salary cap to go way up this year, as we've talked
Right.
about already on the show. It could be upwards of 93 million, maybe more than that. And
we should do a show what happened the last time that the
yeah,
payroll was at 93 million and how teams wasted money. It would be a good show.
yeah. And the other thing too is that part of the reason why the escrow happened in the first place is because they overshot what the salary cap should be. And then when COVID hit, they
Right.
had to like knock it down, right? It
Right.
wouldn't have been as bad for the players had they gone with a more appropriate salary cap prior to that in the
Right.
first place.
Right.
So I think it's really interesting how they're
It's a sliding
spinning
scale.
this,
Like it just,
right?
that's what it is. You want that
Yeah.
adjustable mortgage or you want a fixed?
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
saying.
That's exactly what it is. So all of this, it will impact the next CBA, and I will be intrigued to see how they
Me
come
too.
out in the wash on the salary cap. We'll talk about it when it comes. As far as our nemesis of the week, last week I talked about having to wait a whole other year for my birthday again, and I'm still feeling that to some degree. And I think, it's measuring things annually is a tough thing to do these days,
Oh
but
yeah.
I will continue to do it. You talked about the Sixers, and rightfully so. Like, what a terrible, terrible thing to have done to the city of Philadelphia, and it
Yep.
continues to have repercussions.
Oh yeah.
We talked on the show last week about the new arena and, things we'd want to see in it. So check that show out from last Wednesday if you haven't already. This week, given the week ahead and the couple of weeks ahead, to be fair, this Metro Division hell we are in leading up to the Four Nations break, like, it is relentless. It does not get easier. There's 2 more games against the Devils the following week. Then we have that aforementioned Islanders game where Tsyplakov will come to the Wells Fargo
Yep.
Center.
Yep.
It's gonna get ugly. It's gonna get dirty, I think, in
Yep.
some of these games. I certainly hope, knock on wood, that nobody gets hurt as part of this, but all of this is also super
I'm sure
important.
Patrick Waugh won't get mad and John Tortorella won't be screaming at him. I'm sure
No.
that won't happen.
No. So, all of this has huge implications for the playoff race. So, there's a lot of really important hockey coming up, and
Yep.
it's very intense leading up to the Four Nations break.
All right. So my nemesis is stop complaining about the refs and Patrick Mahomes. I get it. He's going to get some calls. Michael Jordan got calls. Every great player in every sport gets calls. That's the way sports works. It's worked that way since I was a kid. And if your team was the Chiefs, would you be saying, like, let's say it was Jalen Hurts and Jalen Hurts got all these calls, would you be saying, oh no, they shouldn't be giving him that 15 yards. Oh no, Hurts he faked that. He shouldn't be getting the other team shouldn't be getting a penalty that. Would you honestly say that? No, you wouldn't. So, but what nobody talks about is like when somebody has Patrick Mahomes wrapped up and he's falling down and he throws like a 7-yard touchdown pass where most quarterbacks just get sacked. Or you don't talk about him and Travis Kelce rapidly being the best producing touchdown to receiver to tight end, basically playoff history and NFL playoff history. Nobody wants to talk about that. They want to talk about the other stuff. It's like, you know what? Just like you said about the Devils, they do just manage to win, whether it's close or whatever. The Chiefs do the same thing, but on a much bigger scale. So, stop the complaint.
Yeah. I don't watch the football, so I don't really know anything that you're talking
I know,
about right
I know.
now.
This will get
But
reaction, I'm sure, but whatever. That's how I feel.
well, that being said, bringing it back to hockey, I think it's
Yes.
interesting about guys getting calls because Connor McDavid cross-checked Connor Garland in
Yep.
that Oilers Canucks game on Saturday. As of recording, we don't
And he
know.
punched him a couple of times too.
Yeah, yeah. And so as of recording, we don't know what the suspension will be, but
Or
there
if
will
it'll
be.
be a suspension. Or if it will be a suspension. We have to say that. I do believe he has to get a 1-game
Yeah,
suspension.
he
If
has
not,
to.
the league is going to look really silly.
Well, because he got a match penalty.
I know. I know.
So a suspension has to come, whether it's
has
1
to.
game or multiple, that
Right.
remains to be determined, in my opinion. But I think in hockey, there are some guys that get calls on the ice, but when it comes to the supplemental discipline, that's like the flip side of doing it by the book, is that there has to be like a minimum suspension when you get a game misconduct for a shot like this.
Well, again, just like with the Paling situation and it getting overturned in game, you don't think they could overturn a match after a game and say, I don't think a match was necessary and he's not going to get a suspension. You don't think this is possible, Rachel?
God, I think like if it was more of a borderline hit, maybe, but this is so blatant. Like I just don't think in this circumstance, and I don't think that Connor McDavid is gonna get that kind of a treatment by
I
the
hope not.
league.
I
I
hope not.
think, yeah, I think in game it's very possible on individual plays that he gets calls. Crosby gets calls. Ovechkin gets calls. Like
Ovechkin's gotten a million. I mean,
Ovechkin gets a million calls. Like it drives me crazy.
he
But
gets away
like
with a lot.
so much, and like the fact that like when Claude Giroux used to complain about getting slashed on the wrist at every single face off, like
Yeah,
stuff like that happens, right?
right.
But I do think in this case, like it was just so egregious. Like they're not gonna have any chance here to
Okay.
dump it. But stranger things have happened, I guess, and we'll see. We'll see what happens with Connor McDavid, and potentially talk about it on later shows related to other supplemental discipline. But that will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. You can send in mailbag questions or your Flyers thoughts on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on all the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert. Get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.